Let's take a look at Hebrew poetry in the Old Testament. There are passages of Hebrew poetry in the prose Pentateuch and historical books, such as Moses' Song, Hannah's Song, etc., but Hebrew poetry abounds in Psalms, wisdom literature, such as Job, Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, and Song of Songs, and the prophets. Hebrew poetry is complex and still not completely understood. Although most of us cannot read biblical Hebrew, we can all still appreciate the artistry of the genre. Ugaritic texts show close similarities to Hebrew poetry and have helped 1. Make sense of rare Hebrew words, 2. Better understand parallelism as an ancient Near Eastern art form, and 3. Know what people believed Bel and Asherah were like. Here are some common characteristics of Hebrew poetry. Hebrew poetry sometimes makes use of meter and rhyme, but it more commonly makes use of parallelism and imagery. Here are some examples of synonymous parallelism. The first line makes a statement, the second line repeats the thought. Show me your ways, O Lord, teach me your paths. Come near, you nations, and listen. Pay attention, you peoples. Let the earth hear and all that is in it, the world and all that comes out of it. Yet how often is the lamp of the wicked snuffed out? How often does calamity come upon them? Here's some examples of antithetical parallelism, where the first line makes a statement and the second line stands in contrast to it. The sluggard craves and gets nothing, but the desires of the diligent are fully satisfied. For the Lord watches over the way of the righteous, but the way of the wicked will perish. Better to lie on a corner of the roof than share a house with a quarrelsome wife. Here's some examples of formal or synthetic parallelism, where the first line makes a statement and the second line carries or expands the thought. Do not be quickly provoked in your spirit, for anger resides in the lap of fools. A besieging army is coming from a distant land, raising a war cry against the cities of Judah. Look on my suffering and deliver me, for I have not forgotten your law. And here are some secondary forms of parallelism. First, there's emblematic parallelism, which explicitly makes an analogy with like or as, and is closely related to poetic imagery. As the deer pants for streams of water, so my soul pants for you, O God. Then there's also repetitive, stepladder, or climactic parallelism, which begins with a statement but repeats and carries it further than simply synonymous parallelism. Ascribe to the Lord, O mighty ones. Ascribe to the Lord glory and strength. Ascribe to the Lord the glory due his name. Worship the Lord in the splendor of his holiness. Here's some examples of chiasm. A chiasm occurs when successive lines reverse the order in which the parallel themes appear. The name comes from the Greek letter chi, which looks like an X. O Lord, forgive me. Blot out my sin, O God of my salvation. Blessed is the man who does not walk in the counsel of the wicked, and in the way of sinners he does not stand. Some other examples of Hebrew poetry include Inclusios and Acrostics. Hebrew poetry is often highly structured and it ought to be analyzed at the level of individual lines as well as at the level of whole poems. Inclusios and Acrostics are examples of large-scale poetic structuring. An inclusio occurs when the first line of a poem corresponds to the last line of the poem. For example, Psalm 8, verse 1a and verse 9 both say, O Lord, our Lord, how majestic is your name in all the earth. An acrostic is an alphabetic poem that works through the 22 letters of the Hebrew alphabet. The most famous example in the Bible is Psalm 119. Hebrew poetry also contains imagery. It's rich with images. Just think of all the ways Psalms describes God. Rock, sword, shield, fortress, storm cloud, shepherd, warrior, archer, chariot rider, king, etc. But there are different types of imagery, such as personification, which attributes human characteristics to something non-human. God can also be personified. Also, similes. A simile is a comparison made explicit by using like or as. Also, metaphors. A metaphor is an implicit comparison that does not use like or as. Next time, we're going to be looking at the Book of Psalms, one of the best examples of Hebrew poetry at work in the Bible.